And just like that, here we are, another edition of Eagles Squad, our second one. Jason Martinez joining Harry Mays and I for this edition of Eagles Squad. Jason, welcome into the pack. I know you got some things going on right now. You're going to be doing most of the driving on this show. I'm just going to take some of this lifting for you right now because I know you got a lot going on in your world. You've been very public about your battle. How you feeling today, my friend?
I actually feel pretty good today. I already got outside and got a little sun on my face. It's a little chilly out there. A little too cold for Harry still.
It's okay. I'll get outside
degrees
today.
From mean Harry Mays weather. There's a line on that old school thermometer you used to shake. And when it gets to a certain line, Harry goes, "Okay, now it's acceptable."
Yeah, you got a little vitamin D today, a little sun. You got a little on the dome. I see that. That looks good.
Yeah. So I feel pretty good. I'm getting excited to the last game of the Flyer season is tonight, and getting excited once again to. Sports, when you have that multiple thing, you have your seasons, and then you have like a reset to start over and do it again, like lather, rinse, repeat. And when the hockey season ends, albeit way too early for the Flyers without a playoff berth again, but you have the reset. Okay, now it's time to start looking ahead to the fall and the Eagles and football. We have the baseball team, which is going to be incredibly compelling here in Philly this summer. But I'm looking forward to kind of resetting on the Eagles as well, because what could have been more compelling than what the hell they did last year? Just insane.
Literally. Yeah, the most compelling thing. We'll obviously be getting into that, and we're going to be breaking down every storyline. We got 2 shows a week we're going to be doing with you guys, taking you into the season. Of course, you guys know Harry Mays and Jason Martinez from their radio careers, everything that they've accomplished there. And also for your Locked On Eagles postcasts throughout this Super Bowl championship season for the Birds. So make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to everything that is Locked On Eagles podcast with our 2 Eagles reporters. Do a fantastic job here on the Eagles YouTube channel for Locked On, and you'll have us on the same channel breaking it down when it comes to your Eagles Squad podcast and right here YouTube show on Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Some things we're going to get into today. Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni addressed the media this week, and as per usual during draft week, fellas, you get nothing. You get nothing from these guys. But as it goes on, you actually get a little bit of a hint as to the direction they could be going with this draft pick. Well, Harry, I know you and I discussed on, I think it was Monday, that up or back, they trade up or they trade back, which direction. Here's one thing I think I can guarantee after listening to Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. They ain't picking at 32. The 32nd pick, Harry, is not going to be their pick.
Right. It's either up or down. Yeah.
And Jason, I know, you've been hot on this one, and we'll talk about it as well. Howie Roseman and the career arc, if you will, of Howie Roseman. From the guy that we all had fun making fun of, yet watching our team be terrible, to Chip Kelly taking over, and then it's swinging back to Howie Roseman, and then all of a sudden 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl championships, and now the guy can't do any wrong. We'll get into that. Emmitt Smith apparently hates hearing "Go Birds" now, and Jalen Hurts Time. What is it even Time Magazine anymore? Times 100. Is it even Time Magazine anymore?
I think it's just a website.
Are there magazines anymore?
And I don't think so.
I haven't stopped in and picked up one behind the brown, behind had the cardboard in front of it, so you couldn't see the.
I don't
cover.
think they make the dirty magazines anymore. That's
They
all
don't
on
do that anymore,
websites too. Yeah.
I used to have to stop on my road to State College on my path up there in Selinsgrove, because there was always a good spot to pick up 1 or 2.
Oh yeah, it's a real seedy joint right off the 322 there.
You go over that little bridge; it's right there on the right.
I remember that spot.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Like I said, we'll cover it all.
Oh yeah,
uncovered.
Yeah. Let's start it with this, fellas, because I had this epiphany, and I don't know where you guys have been. Just talking about career arcs of Jalen Hurts, for instance. What made me go, this guy might have it, was the year after Carson Wentz, and we were looking at Jalen Hurts. He had taken over for Carson Wentz already. He had played 4 games, 5 games, whatever it was at the end of that season. And we were essentially going into the year with Jalen Hurts as our quarterback. That's what we were all assuming. However, there were rumors about Deshaun Watson, whether or not the Eagles were going to trade for Deshaun Watson, as the Browns eventually did. There were rumors about the Eagles going and get Aaron Rodgers. There was rumors about not only the Eagles being interested in Russell Wilson, but the Eagles also offering Russell Wilson a deal to get him here to Philadelphia, which apparently he turned down before he signed with the Broncos. And through that entire process, that entire offseason, the first time Jalen Hurts got to take to the microphones was at training camp. And he was asked about all the rumors. And this is the moment I went, maybe the Eagles have something here. Jalen Hurts said, I'm above it all. That's all he said. I'm above it all. He said, what's going on behind you guys, meaning the practice field at the NovaCare complex, that's where I can control things. Everywhere else, anywhere else, I can't control it. And I thought, this guy is not mentally soft at all. In an age where everyone's talking about mental toughness, I thought Jalen Hurts, and went on to prove it, obviously, was mental toughness galore. Like on mental steroids, if you could do it. That's when I thought this guy might be something. We just went through the whole thing with Carson Wentz. We've had stories in years past of Terrell Owens and Donovan McNabb and all that. And then Hurts just gets better and better and better. Now you're talking about a top 100 most influential people on the planet. Jalen Hurts, your quarterback, is one of them. And the epiphany for me, Harry, was that the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback right now is the quarterback that you want and the quarterback that I think most NFL teams need. What do you take away from all this Jalen Hurts getting his flowers over the last couple of months?
Yeah, it's much deserved. I mean, I don't know if I ever had an epiphany moment, but the fact that you said you had yours, you look back as to where this kid came from, it kind of makes sense. I mean, he was the son of a coach. He went to Alabama and got benched with Alabama and dealt with that mentally. Ends up at Oklahoma, leads them to, a great season. I mean, he just has dealt with adversity, and kind of has been doubted because of his size or because of whatever. Was never thought of as one of those sure thing top flight quarterbacks coming out of college. And he was taken in the second round by Howie Roseman back in 2020. And we kind of went, man, that seems a little bit early, for this guy. And, I'm thinking, I watch all this college football, and even I'm sitting there thinking maybe fourth round pick. I don't know. Second seems a little high, but Howie knew something. He knew something about the mental toughness of this guy and what he would bring to the room. Not necessarily knowing maybe that he was going to turn into your starter as quick as he did, but just what he would bring to this team, and sort of, the intangibles, at least at first. And, and for me, it was all about like, okay, I know he's got certain skill sets and I know he's mentally tough, but is he going to be able to handle it on a week-to-week basis in the NFL being the guy? And that took time for me to buy in, and I eventually bought in. I don't exactly remember when my moment was, but it took me a while.
Yeah, some interesting things that you say, Harry. First of all, dealing with Alabama and Oklahoma, like that's a big deal. Those are some of the things you look at. You go, can a guy come to this market? Big markets, New York, Philly, Chicago, those where there's going to be accountability. You can't hide in the weeds in those markets if you're not performing. Can you handle it? And when you play for, college teams like that their fan bases are as fervent as NFL, if not more than some NFL markets. The interesting thing is, when Howie picked him, did he pick him to be the starter? He couldn't have at that point, right? Because they had just signed Wentz to that monster deal,
right?
Which led to the biggest dead money cap issue in the history of the NFL eventually when they had to move on from Wentz. But did Howie also go back to when Carson got hurt in the 2017 season and had to rely on Nick Foles to get through and win a Super Bowl to say, this position of my second, I won't even call it backup, my second quarterback is of paramount importance because of the volatility of the starter. Now, I don't think, that's 3D chess. Like a lot of GMs don't play 3D chess. They play that chess on the surface. These are my starters. These are who I go with. Not kind of looking at, hey, this is a contact sport. I could lose any one of these guys at any time. I have to have the replacement to step in to not derail my season. I think that's a big part of it. And Hurts, the thing is, he comes in here as not expecting to be the savior. I always think that's a good position for a young quarterback to come in because it takes a lot of pressure off you. He had this huge pressure at the guy next to him in Wentz who faltered under it and the injuries and everything else. So I think he came into a situation and then he could rise and mature as an NFL player and not to us optically on the outside or fans inside that locker room, along with a guy like Brandon Graham and Jason Kelce. They allowed him to mature as a leader. And I think that that's as big a part of his success as any of it of the other stuff. Because that's the big thing with the quarterback. It's the ability to lead men and not panic and have those guys having your back when the S hits the fan.
Yeah.
And he does that incredibly well. He he comes off so likable, and just seems like he handles those things so well that I think the guys in that locker room would do anything for him, and that's a big part of winning to me.
No, I 100% agree with that. 100%. Yeah, and the other thing with all of it is you're talking about a guy, and this is another thing that just blew me away. Now, obviously, what matters most is what happens on the football field, and there was a lot of questions going into that Super Bowl even about if the Kansas City Chiefs, if they stop Saquon Barkley, is Jalen Hurts going to be able to make the throws? I mean, these are questions that were legitimate being asked during the season by not even just haters, but people that really wanted to know the answer to it. Oh, if they stop Barkley, can Jalen Hurts make the throws? Well, he only proved that by being the Super Bowl MVP, so I'd say he proved it. But another thing that he said was after the season, he's the only quarterback I've ever heard talk about winning a Super Bowl as if it was an inconvenience. Like, this guy is at his locker in the clean-out day, which is usually the most miserable day of the year after an NFL season. The Eagles are the only team that get to enjoy it because they just won the Super Bowl. And Jalen Hurts gets asked about his off-season regimen and what he's going to do. And he says, well, other quarterbacks have a head start on me because they're already in their off-season regimen and they're already working out. They're already going through the training and all that stuff. But, I was, in New Orleans and we had the parade and media circuit and this. And I'm like, he's literally talking about how the Super Bowl championship got in the way of his off-season. That might sound crazy to some people, but if you followed him as we have throughout his entire career, you're talking about a guy that just wants to get back to work.
Yeah.
I think he understands that he made the mistake maybe of letting, his first year of making it to a Super Bowl and getting paid and all that. He made the mistake of maybe getting distracted for a second. He'll never take his eye off the ball again. Not that he did drastically, but he'll never make the mistake again of anyone being able to hint at the idea that he took his eye off the ball for a second. And that's why you have the conversation about keeping the main thing so often.
Well, also about, after that first Super Bowl loss, didn't he keep a picture or something of the confetti coming down on Kansas City? And it's like, that was that thing to sort of, like Laviolette said, let it burn. You know what I mean? Like, it was burning in his gut from the minute that it happened until through the off season into the next season. And you talk about this Time 100 thing. He connected with Derek Jeter, apparently, who was, I guess, also on the list, and rightly so. And Jeter says, we connected shortly after the Super Bowl, and the only thing he asked about was insight on going back and winning again. Sometimes people win, then they exhale. Jalen ain't exhaling. He's embracing the next challenge. Win or lose, his resilience and determination offer all of us something to admire. That's from Jeter.
Yeah, it's different.
That's pretty cool.
That's a different alien. Look, pro athletes, 99.9% of them are wired to be competitors, whether it's the sport that they play and make a living at, whether it's ping pong at home. They want to rip your arms out. Like, they compete. That's what they do. And it's no matter what they do. But there's other guys, like you always had guys in your town where you grew up. There's all these good athletes, and then there's just this other guy that's just on a different level. Then take that to another level, and you have your pro athletes. But then there's another upper crust of that, and it's the guy that is so motivated. And I don't think it's by winning. I don't think Derek Jeter was motivated because he loved winning. I don't think Jalen Hurts is motivated because he loves winning. I think they're motivated because they hate losing. Mm-hmm. Winning is the byproduct of what should be the result if you do things right and whatever and circumstance. Losing feels like failure. It's guttural. And I think that's what makes those guys like Derek Jeter, who won so many championships and probably put in work that other guys weren't willing to do, because the physical and mental and emotional reaction to losing hurt them too bad.
Well, that was one of those things, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was one of those things that bothered a lot of people in this town about McNabb. Yeah. Because it
didn't bother him.
It seemed like it didn't. I don't know if it bothered. Yeah. I interviewed him a few times. I don't know him, but it was one of those things where he kind of had that aloof sort of personality in a lot of instances, where you got the feeling, does he really hate to lose?
Yeah, he'd moonwalk after losing, right?
Yeah, right. It was kind of this goofiness. There was this goofiness about him, which I think was a way to sort of deflect. But he was just a guy that he wasn't wired quite like that.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. And Harry, when I get asked by people outside the market, like, why wasn't there this? Why isn't McNabb beloved in Philadelphia even before the Eagles had won Super Bowls? Why isn't he beloved? It's like he just didn't connect with the city of Philadelphia. They want to know that you hate losing. I literally would say this. They want to know that you hate losing more than you love winning.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that you say it because Jordan Mailata, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts to an extent, all talked about after winning. They all went, that's it. Like, I've definitely hated losses more than I've loved winning the Super Bowl. Like the arc was so quick lived. Like, they went over that hill kind of quick.
Yeah, losing has staying power. In the mind and body. And winning is an exhale of elation and accomplishment that, you know, when you retire or whatever, you can look back on and revel in, and it becomes part of, you know, how you're introduced to banquets and to friends. Is how you sign an autograph now, Super Bowl champ, or in Jalen Hurts' case, Super Bowl MVP. That becomes part of that. But I don't think the staying power, the sting of losing, I think lasts way longer than the admiration of accomplishment for these guys. And look, that's some guys, maybe it does. You know, the joy of winning and the sting of losing doesn't last long. And maybe that's part of the reason why they're not winners. To be a winner, I think that sting of losing is a huge motivating factor to get you to the point where you're willing to do what somebody else is not willing to do at all costs. And to me, you look at winners in sports, I think that's the one DNA that they all share, is that they're willing to do with what others are not willing to do. The guy across from you. And that's why they win.
They keep adding to the arsenal. They keep adding to the arsenal as it goes on. When we come back, all right, we talked a lot about Jalen Hurts.
That was a good discussion, by the way. I really
I thought it was. We kicked it around rather well. I thought we kicked it around rather well.
Very philosophical, but I loved
it. Well, we're only gonna get more philosophical because we are philosophers after all, fellas.
Exactly.
When we come back, we're gonna talk about another philosopher, the Eagles philosopher, Howie Roseman, and his draft philosophy. Jason and Harry, I know you guys got a lot on this when it comes to Howie Roseman and his approach, especially in one particular word: aggressive. They had a 27-minute press conference. He and Nick Sirianni. Yeah, that's right. Nick Sirianni was also there. But the main character of the press conference was Howie Roseman, as one would assume. And he talked about how aggressiveness is in his DNA. We'll talk about Howie Roseman and how we came to trust so much in Howie. That's when we return here on Locked On Eagles Squad on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Back after this. Gametime app is where it's at. Nothing better than the Gametime app. Nothing better than catching a baseball game live and in person. Same thing in football and basketball, whatever the case might be. Last minute tickets, all in pricing. Gametime app has you covered for everything, especially when you talk about game time picks. This feature on the Gametime app allows you to filter out all the fluff so you get right down to it. The best seats at the best prices on the Gametime app. It makes finding the best deals effortless. You can also take the guessing work out of buying tickets when it comes to the Gametime app, because you can even view your seat's vantage point before you buy the ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Gametime app, whether it's for the game, the concert, the comedy show, the big event, whatever it might be. Gametime app has you covered. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Locked On NFL. That's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase on the Gametime app. Terms apply. Again, create an account, download the app, create an account, use promo code Locked On NFL on the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's get back into the swing of things here with our football conversation, shifting things over to Howie Roseman. I like to joke, and Harry, I might have said this to you on Monday. I like to always joke that, you know, this job, like talking about the Eagles, was a lot more fun when Howie just continued to make us look smart. You know, when he sucked at his job, this job was a lot more fun. But now he's kind of good at it. Jason, how the hell did this happen?
I don't know, because I didn't see it. I was a double H. You'd H. Howie hater. I was like, this guy's a nerd and wannabe, like from a social, like the way he portrays himself. It wasn't wasn't my kind of guy. No, he wasn't like a Cubs football guy, hand in the dirt. One of those guys. Like this was with this new era of the kind of geeky GM, frankly. But the fact of the matter is this: you cannot deny the resume at this point. You can't do it anymore. And I know, before we went to break, you said that when you look at Howie and the trade about him is aggressive. I look at Howie and I say, every GM in this city, in every sport, even though the rules are slightly different in the NBA than they are in baseball and they are in the NHL and they are in NFL, you have to look at Howie and you have to say, we have to compete with Howie. And to compete with Howie, in some ways, is to emulate Howie, a guy who didn't get it right at first, but learned. The thing that Howie does, the single greatest thing, is that he uses all levers at his disposal again, for the fear of losing, I think, trying to feel some sense of accomplishment. He's so driven that he will step on his grandmother's hand to get to the next round of the playoffs. And he will do anything that fits inside the CBA of the NFL to improve the team that he works for, the Philadelphia Eagles, without question, without compromise. He will use every lever available to him. And I think some GMs in other leagues, they have GM agreements. We don't do that to another GM. We got this RFA offer. No. Howie, carve your eyes out. And I think other GMs need to take that approach. Because when you have Howie in this city and you see the rise of what he has done, not only what he's done on the field and the brand that has brought off the field, billions with a B dollars that team is worth because of the success on the field and the way they carry themselves. And I think it comes down to the GM, and I'll give the owner credit too. I'm not quick to hand out Pollyanna to him, but he's the one that hired him. He's the one that kept him. He's the one that put him back in. So he's got to get credit. And while I don't love Howie personality-wise, football teams aren't built on his personality to me. The dude is an animal and will do anything to win. And if a fan base can't admire that, that's what you want. That's what you need. It's hard to win championships. This guy puts the Eagles in the conversation as often as humanly possible. It really is incredible because he came in as a geeky boy, stepping on hands on the way up the ladder. Now he'll just kick you down the ladder. You don't care.
See, that's coming from a guy who spends most of his time in a hockey room, with tough guys, and where the GMs are former players and they're all big brute guys that could still get in a bar fight and all that kind of stuff. You're used to that kind of realm. The other sports have changed, man. I got to tell you that the other sports have changed. Baseball, basketball, football. There's an analytical approach, and not all these guys look like they could go handle themselves, in a back alley. So you got to get, enough with the geeky stuff, okay? Those were back in the old days. I think you got to, just come to the grips with the fact that this guy is good at what he's doing, good at his job. And you brought up the fact that Lurie deserves credit, and he does. And I don't hand out a lot of plaudits, willingly to him either. He has annoyed me, for many years for other
scar
things.
Tissue, Harry, frankly.
Yes, I do have a lot of scar tissue on my liver mostly, but some with regards to Jeffrey Lurie. But the fact that he stayed with him is amazing, because most guys who did what Howie did back in the beginning days when he was the GM would have been fired. Okay, fired and out of the organization and had to rebuild their career somewhere else. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. Jeffrey Lurie kept him. And I think he kept him because maybe he had a hunch, but he also knew that this guy is really good at the cap. And that was the thing that really, that was where he earned his bones. And he learned about player, evaluation and things. He went to the University of Florida. He was around a lot of great athletes back when he was there in college. And I think that's when he was envisioning, man, he's putting together football teams in his head, if I was in the second round, I'd grab this guy and this guy would be, he was doing that. And then finally he realized all I got to do is watch the SEC at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon. And that's where I'm going to go get my guys. And somewhere around 2020, one is where he started to do it, and now he's a legend.
Yeah,
that's it.
To
me,
you go back to that time. You go back to that time though, that little window where Howie Roseman was pushed aside for Chip Kelly.
Yeah,
I mean, I know it got talked about recently. I don't know if it was around the time Chip got hired by the Raiders or whenever it was, but I never looked at Howie Roseman until that last year of Chip Kelly as someone who had no control over the draft. Like, I always considered that last year of Chip Kelly to be all Chip and not anything with Howie. But
agreed.
Bottom line is, Howie was pushed aside, and we've all made. We're talking about making jokes about the guy. We've all made the jokes about the broom closet, moved to the other side of the building. You know,
it's not a joke. Stuff. He was in there.
He literally was in there. He was like, "Do you need a broom or a mop?" Anyway, and he goes, all right, now Howie, come back. Now come back, and he came back after Chip Kelly, right?
Yep.
He comes back 2 years later, gentlemen.
Yeah, you
win the franchise's first Super Bowl with arguably the deepest roster ever to win a Super Bowl. I mean, think about the roster. Okay, that was all put together by Howie Roseman.
In-season trades in that one, too. Jai Blunt.
Yeah. He did all of it. Mm-hmm. And then with a different head coach and quarterback 5 years later, you're back in a Super Bowl. And then you're back again 2 years later with that same head coach and quarterback. And this time you win. Like, it is like Jason, you'll love this. The only person I've compared it to is Bernie Perrant. The only person who, flyer, not a flyer, comes back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. You know what I mean? Like, went away, came back, and was so much better. Hall of Fame weather.
I agree with that, Farzi. Frenchie agrees.
Put me in the same name. Anyway, that'll be an hour. That'll be a whole hour. Yeah. But when it comes to Howie Roseman, it's the most amazing thing that he literally was banished from the land, brought back, and saved the kingdom. That's really what it comes down to. And to your point, Harry, it's so interesting. The idea of crediting Jeffrey Lurie for saying, okay, hold on a second. I know I have somebody really good in Howie Roseman, but I'm giving the keys to the castle to this college coach that I really wanted to see do well. I took a big swing on him.
Right.
Why not go completely all in the rest of the way? I know Howie is right there on the precipice of being great. Like in Jeffrey Lurie's mind, maybe this is what he's thinking. But yeah, hey, take some time away. Come back, be better than ever. And it's worked out. And that really, I don't think enough people give enough credit to Jeffrey Lurie for that.
Yeah. I mean, he was that time in between there when Joe Douglas was here and he was like executive vice president of football ops. You know, I'm sure he was a big part of the draft too, but he didn't have that title of general manager, you know, and it was kind of murky. Like there needs to be a 30 for 30 done on Howie Roseman. There really does. It would be awesome.
It would be great.
It really would be good.
Frankly, it'd be a good movie.
It would, yeah, it would. But he drafted. Did he draft Nick Foles? Was it his idea to go get him in the third round or whatever the heck they got him?
Yeah, who ends up being top at the time. Remember?
Yeah, Sunshine.
Like, who's this dude? Right?
Yeah.
I know for a fact that Jeffrey Lurie did love Nick Foles.
Okay.
They had Russell
but those
Wilson
two
and
would
Nick
go
Foles.
and scout.
Right.
Jeff Lurie and Howie would go and scout. And we were always like, you are not a scout.
Right.
Write the checks, you know.
But I mean, you think back to the Andre Dillards, the Jalen Ragers, the Davion Taylor. Remember when they tried to tell us Davion Taylor was this fast linebacker that was going to be great, and he couldn't do anything but special teams, really. Zach McPherson was another guy he tried to tell us was going to be a star. Like, there was a lot of misses along the line, and then all of a sudden it was like, bam! It went, like Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams, and Kenny Gainwell, all in one freaking draft. Then the next one, Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean. He even got Calcaterra late in the 5th, 6th round or whatever it was, who was now last year was a big part with Goddard on the men. Jalen Carter, Nolen Smith, Tanner McKee as a backup quarterback even came in and showed you that he's got some promise. All of a sudden, he can't lose. Round. Well, right, yeah, they went and found Mailata, playing rugby or Australian rules football, whatever it is, and they hit gold on that too. So it's really been an amazing story.
It's fascinating. Jordan Mailata in his first training camp had to have other teammates help him put on the equipment. He didn't know how to put the shoulder pads and equipment on, for goodness sake. I mean, that's how raw he was.
Yeah. And it's kind of like Doug Peterson not knowing how to use the headset or whatever, like hitting those buttons. Remember when
this thing on? Check 1, 2.
Third down. Doug, what do you want to do?
Check. Does this work?
He's going like that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to me, it's fascinating. And it does stem from the ownership, because everything I think in sports stems from ownership, and you have to identify who you are and who you're going to be at all times.
Yeah.
You look at the great franchises in sports.
An identity.
The Yankees
Yeah.
have always know who they are. Whether right down to the shaving.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, their DNA. They'll draft guys, and if they don't fit, sayonara.
Yeah.
See you later.
They need to change. They need to change that DNA. By the way,
they do. They need it. They need an update.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But you look at stability in organizations too is a big element. The ones that fail are the ones that are constantly turning it over, and it seems like they can never get it right because they just don't ever stick to anything, and it's constantly changing what they want to be. And with Howie, the relationship with Jeff, I think, is the big thing. The amount of plane rides, the amount of time that they spend talking to each other. I think they share the same kind of passion and will to win, although they exude it in a different way than athletes do.
Yeah.
Which is harder for fans maybe to identify with because it's not as guttural feeling, but they're driven the same way.
Yeah.
And Howie is driven that way as well. And again, he like Jeter, like maybe Jalen Hurts, are those guys that I don't think it's the fear of winning, the accomplishment. I think it's the fear of losing and being a failure. And maybe that's something from their childhood and their life. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. But what I do know is those guys are willing to do anything. And Howie makes it fun. He always puts his team in the mix. They will. There's a big name out there. They're in play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like what Nick Sirianni had said at the owners meetings, talking about how when you get to the point that you really want to be at, that's when you have to work harder than ever. And I think Howie got to that point. Yeah, exactly. And I think Howie got to that point, but didn't realize everything that went into it. And when he got that second chance by a guy that still saw potential in him and Jeffrey Lurie, he said, well, when I give this guy this next opportunity, after he has essentially a year to get better at the job I want him to be great at, essentially gave enough rope to Chip Kelly for him to take care of that. He went back to Howie and he said, all right, well, now's your second chance. This doesn't happen. Make sure you take full advantage of this and don't miss. And the one miss that I really do think of is the Justin Jefferson deal, as I think a lot of people think of. But you know what's helped me? You know what's comforted me in that? Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. That's helped me in getting over that debacle, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jeremy in our comments said, bingo, you hit the nail on the head, Harry. That Danny Watkins.
Oh, yeah. But see, even back then, because I was saying this to Marc before we started the show, it's murky. A lot of the early years of Howie Roseman. Like, was he really responsible for Danny Watkins, or was that Andy Reid?
That was Andy Reid.
You know what I mean? Like, he was technically the GM, but that was an Andy Reid pick.
Yeah, it was in title only.
Yeah, yeah. But, and to take it all right full circle, because you were talking about how he said he's going to be aggressive, and you can guarantee that, that's what he's going to be. He knows over all these years of being in Philadelphia that that's going to play to the fan base too. And there's a little bit of that in Howie. He knows how to do it now. Like, you say certain things and it gets the fans all fired up and behind you, because he's got a lot of leeway now. I mean, he's got 2 Super Bowl championships.
He's got cachet.
Yeah.
Right. More than Reid had when he was here in Philly.
Right.
Just saying is all when he was here in Philly. Just saying.
Yeah.
When we come back, there's one name that I want to kick around with you guys, and it was probably one of the more interesting things to come out of that 27-minute press conference, and it was something that Howie Roseman laid down as far as the philosophy that the Eagles have when looking at the draft and not drafting this one specific type of player. And we'll talk about a player that has some not off-the-field issues when it comes to criminal activity, but when it comes to overall attitude towards the game of football. We'll talk about them when we return. This is Locked On Eagles Squad podcast on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Back after this. How about LinkedIn, ladies and gentlemen, all small business owners? Your work, listen to this, doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn Jobs clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easier to post your job for free, share it on your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions, then quickly get your job in front of the right people with the deep candidate insights that you need. That's how fantastic LinkedIn Jobs is. It's also great when you post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. LinkedIn.com/lockedonnfl. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. LinkedInjobs.com. That's LinkedIn.com/lockedonnfl. Do I got Jason? Did I lose Jason?
He's
Oh, maybe I was
coming
muted.
in right
There
there.
we
He
go.
is.
Muted?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go. Sorry about that.
I think your mic, by the way, switched to your computer mic.
Yeah.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Oh, thank you for letting me know that.
Took
Yeah.
it off your background looks good, by the way.
Oh, thanks, brother. Appreciate that.
There you
Nice.
go.
Well, home
Sounds
studio.
good.
The kids are, I don't know about you guys, but my kids are on spring break, so they're home.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys know this about kids, 5 and 3 years old, not quiet.
No.
Nor do they respect when you ask for quiet.
Right.
I bought like it's in the background. You can't see it on the screen, but I bought like an on-air light, but it doesn't go on like like the old studios when you turn your mic on for them not to invade the space.
Oh, right.
Oh.
Eventually, sometimes you might get a walkthrough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, background walkthrough or Dad. You can hand.
I don't think he'd mind me saying this. Greg Murphy with the Phils?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Phils, yeah. Murph has did his basement, and when you go into his bathroom in the basement and you close the door, a little on-air light comes on.
Oh, that's terrific.
So that's how you know it's occupied.
Terrific.
That's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet.
There's a summer project.
There you go.
There you go.
My on-air light at the bathroom was on quite a bit leading up to where I am now.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
We don't need that detailed
Yeah.
any further. Okay.
That light bulb would have burned out, Harry.
I've heard way too much about that over the last couple of months.
Yeah, me too.
Jesus.
That'll be segment 4.
Yeah.
Which one? 4.
But fellas, I don't know about you guys, but I did. I sat through 27 minutes of Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. And I think it was the Todd McShay podcast that Howie went on where he said he won't even look at film of players that have domestic violence in their background.
Yeah, I saw that quote.
He kind of walked it back, saying case-by-case basis. We have Dom DeSandro, essentially. He looks into everything for us, and we go off what his investigation shows. So that's one way of looking at it. I thought it was an interesting thing to first off just say and make that blanket statement. But Howie said, I look at it like this. Everything's case by case. And when you do a podcast, it's crazy how they just take 15 seconds and you're on for an hour. And that's the only thing they highlight. So he kind of walked it back and said, yeah, case by case basis. But in a not just football world, this name, Walter Nolen, has picked up a lot of steam most recently. I've seen him come up a bunch as far as the Eagles being tied to him, a guy that would drop in the first round. I think most mock drafts have him between, I think the highest I've seen him is 12. Lowest I've seen him is about 17 or 21, excuse me. The Eagles, of course, pick at 32. But he's somebody that has, not for criminal issues, not for domestic violence. I want to make this clear. He is somebody whose reputation has taken a hit since the end of the season. There's a report from Jeremy Fowler out there saying that this big defensive tackle out of Mississippi wants to play the game of football kind of at his own pace. There was a situation during a game, according to Jeremy Fowler, that he left the game because of injury, was cleared, and refused to go back in the game. There's another issue where
red
he
flag.
just red flag. But here's you can almost explain it to me as while we're talking about that. This is a day and age where kids don't play in bowl games.
Correct.
Because of their NFL, it's a different world now.
It is.
NIL, like it's different. It's just a different world. So that to me, you want to make that business decision. I don't like it at all, but I kind of get it.
Yeah.
The other thing that really bothers me, and I don't see this gentleman ever flying in a room with the Philadelphia Eagles, just practices kind of when he wants to. Has stormed off of practice. Maturity is an issue with Walter Nolen coming out of Ole Miss. And it's a guy that people look at and go, I don't know if this guy's mature or a man enough yet to play in the NFL. And I think everyone thinks the same thing now when you know who your defensive coordinator is in Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
As Charlie Manning used to say, it's not old school, it's good school. Vic Fangio may be old school, but he's also good school. Clint Hurt might be old school, but he's also good school. Could you imagine? a guy like Walter Nolen coming in here and storming off the practice field with Vic Fangio telling him what to do, or Clint Hurt telling him what to do? Because I don't see that fitting here. As much as I am team defensive tackle in this draft coming up, and Harry, you and I talked about it on Monday, Walter Nolen's a guy that is, with this report coming out, kind of walking himself down a couple of draft boards.
Well, I don't know, the validity of the reports. I mean, I'll take them for what they're worth. But all I know is, that this guy was part of that recruiting class that Texas A&M had years ago, where 4 or 5 of those guys are going to possibly go in the first round this year. Some guys are still at Texas A&M. Walter Nolen's not. He left there and went on to be a consensus All-American and a first-team All-SEC defensive lineman for Ole Miss. He played at the Senior Bowl. They interview him. The interview to me is so paramount in situations like this. I'm not a part of it. I got to trust that, the Eagles brass, they know what they're looking for, and we'll decide on this. But man, the guy's a talented football player. And sometimes, I sort of look at, cultures. We talked about this on Monday, a little bit about the Eagles culture, Mark, and they are known throughout the league for having a specific culture. And, Jalen Carter had some issues when he was coming out of Georgia, some things off the field. And, it wasn't that he was lazy or anything, but there were some issues. And look at what that guy, has done. I think there's certain guys you can bring in, and this is where you got to trust these guys when they interview them down at the Senior Bowl or at the Combine or wherever, that, where maybe both times. Maybe they did it at a private workout where they say, you know what, I think our culture and our room, this guy will come around, or, he will fall in line kind of thing. Yeah. So, maybe this smoke screen stuff could help him fall down closer to where the Eagles are, and they don't have to give up as much to go up to maybe 24 to get him, as opposed to going into the top 20, because he's definitely a top 20 talent.
Yeah, again, this is one of the things that the good GMs do.
Yeah.
First of all, information that gets out pre-draft always has an agenda attached to it, so you got to be careful. Right?
A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah. Why is this information coming out? You go back to like Laramie Tunzel. There was there's some kind of campaign.
Oh, was that the greatest thing or what?
It's wild, right?
Oh my God!
But you see a guy that gives you top 12 value that could fall to you. So naturally, what do? Is you talk about it because you want that narrative out there that he may be an issue, because you're laying in the weeds.
Yeah,
you have the agenda.
Warren Sapp,
yes,
years ago,
big time, coming out of Miami.
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And, Howie's one of those guys, and you're dead on, Harry. This is where the GM and those meetings mean everything. Can this guy, I gotta pry into this guy's head and into his soul to find out if he comes into our culture will set him on a path to have those things that are those narratives about him, whether they're going to be his reality or whether they were just that narratives for a young man coming out of college. So this is one of those situations where you can get tremendous value if he drops, and you did your homework and you feel good. And if he falls in line because, of the guys in that dressing room that are going to hold him accountable. The ultimate accountability for players. Coaches hold him accountable, and they hold the hammer of playing time. GMs have a hammer. They have a hammer of your next contract. But ultimate accountability is the guys that you dress next to in that room.
Yeah.
That's where you don't want to disappoint those guys. And if he can fall in line and they feel comfortable, I feel comfortable because they've done this in the past and it's worked.
Here's the other thing.
They have a culture.
Before Mark chimes in here, you got to look at where this guy was. Texas A&M had some of the most talent of any college football team for the last 4 or 5 years. Look at where they finish. Okay, they don't win. Okay, they fired Jimbo Fisher, who was getting paid $90 to $100 million a year, and they walked away from him long before that contract was over. And he brought in tons of talent. There was absolutely no culture there. Then he goes to Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin has a culture, but it isn't really a disciplinary culture. He's worried about putting 45 up every week, and he wants to get his running backs and his wide receivers and his offensive linemen and his quarterbacks drafted. The other side of the ball, just go nuts. I don't think there's a whole lot of institutional control at either one of those stops because they're in the SEC and they got tons of talent, but they don't win. the ultimate
and it's culture.
prize. Yes.
People go, culture, schmulture.
Yeah,
Give
no,
me
it's a big
give me
deal.
a guy who runs a 4.240, and
Yeah.
Right.
those things you have to have the physical skills.
You can cut the corners in certain spots, but the culture is a big deal.
In the NFL, you can't cut the corners.
Yeah.
Because you won't win in the NFL without it. You just won't. You cannot have a team that eats itself. It cannibalizes itself inside that room and win in pro sports. It's just too hard to win in 32-team leagues.
Yeah,
and
people, it's not Madden.
Right.
It's not Madden. These guys aren't programmed to do a certain thing, and then you can develop them and you don't have to worry about mentality. This is a huge part of it. You have to worry about a player's mentality and how he is accepted into your culture.
Well, think about A.J. Brown, right? Like, receivers
Ole
are always
Miss.
volatile.
Ole Miss guy.
Yeah. Always volatile guys.
Yep.
But you crawl inside their head and you do your homework and you go, is this guy going to be driven by the fear of losing? Is he going to do what to go back to it again, what other guys are not willing to do? And he is. He's a freaking gamer.
Yeah.
Right? And you find that part out and you go, I can deal with the little stuff. Our culture will take care of that. Jalen Hurts' leadership will take care of that and not let things escalate and blow up like McNabb T.O. did. Right?
Exactly.
And
Which still
because of
haunts
that-
me, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, because on paper, that was, oh my God, right?
It was
And we
great
lived
for
it.
sports radio.
Yeah, they lived it. You saw it like right away, but they didn't have that strong enough culture to get that in order to not let it become what it became, which was a circus.
Harry, I don't know if you know this story. Jason, I don't even know if you remember this story, but when we come back, my early days in the business, Jason was there with me at T.O.'s house. I want to tell a quick story about in the driveway.
Oh, wow.
I want to tell a quick story about that. And also, I learned something about Mel Kiper that I didn't know. And maybe I'm just the last person to know this. I want to tell the story about Mel Kiper. And also, Emmitt Smith, apparently, go figure, hates hearing "Go Birds."
It took them long enough.
That's a shame. That's a shame. This is we don't have a read here, gentlemen, so I just got to hit the mark, and we'll be right back literally in 3 seconds. All right. 2025, Eagles won the Super Bowl right before everything hit the fan, right when everything was hitting the fan. T.O. tells, I think, Brad Childress to shut up. He gets sent home to his house in Jersey. I get sent there to report on the circus that's there. The circus continues to build. Jason comes a little bit later in the day. We're both working at WIP Radio at the time. And I go to I'm in the driveway with everybody else. Jason's in the driveway. And T.O. comes out with a basketball. Jason, do you remember this part of it?
Shooting hoops, yep. Shooting hoops, yep.
Okay. Do you remember what he said to media members?
I don't.
Okay. Harry, T.O. is looking at media members and goes, I'll play anyone one-on-one for their check. I'm an intern. I'm not making any money.
Farzi wasn't getting paid.
Yeah, I wasn't making any money. So I figure I know how to shoot a basketball.
I figured I don't know how to shoot a basketball. He brought a hockey stick and a net out. I was in, Harry. Game on. Wayne's World style. Game on. So T.O.'s looking around, doesn't get anybody. I'll go, I'll play you. And he looks right at me, bounces the ball to me, and I go, all right, awesome. And Jason goes, hey, just a warning, he's an intern. And I go, Jason!
You had to blow it.
And T.O.
I didn't want to have to write a check as a manager.
Give me that ball back. And I'm like, well, there goes my chance. There goes my opportunity
wow.
to probably, don't get me wrong, get blown away by T.O.
Right,
It's not like
right.
I'm like going to win this game. Like,
But what an epic story you would have had.
Right?
Yes.
It's still epic, by the way.
It was incredible. It was absolutely
total
incredible.
gong show over there in the neighborhood. It was like Marlton, I think, like that.
Morristown, wasn't it?
Morristown. Yeah.
Morristown. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it hot in the driveway and all
it was
the
awful.
members there. Yeah, I mean that house was like a couple houses down and across the street.
Yeah, that's right.
Same
That's
neighborhood.
right.
What a mess that was.
Good times, man. That was
Wow.
hey, that was a long time ago, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah. What year was that?
2005. Yeah, it was the year.
Okay.
Well, the
that's
year
right.
they had lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots. January, late
Right.
January.
Yeah.
January 05, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then that summer, that training camp is when everything hit the fan.
Wanted the new contract.
The new contract. Donovan wouldn't take his back or wouldn't have his back.
He wouldn't
but
vouch.
Brian,
He wouldn't vouch. Yeah.
and he did for Brian Westbrook later on.
Yeah.
But
Theo took it very personally.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right.
Speaking of personal, this is not a good segue, but anyway, speaking of personal, Emmitt Smith went on the radio down in Dallas, also I think up here in Philly as well, and talked about the Philadelphia Eagles still having to catch up to the Dallas Cowboys. And he says lately it's been a shame that people have taken shots, quote unquote, at the star, and he hates hearing when he's out and about, "Go Birds!"
As soon as you see Emmitt, that's what an Eagle fan will do too.
Yo, Emmitt, go Birds.
Right?
He just put the quarter in the machine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Way to go. Way to tell. Way
Exactly.
to tell people how to get to you, Emmitt. You didn't do that as a player, as a great player. You never let the opposition see your weakness. Jeez, but look, his teams were obviously great. His team, since that team, disbanded and accomplished what they accomplished with Aikman and all those guys.
It's close to 30 years.
Yeah, Harry. I mean, it's a long
96.
time.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about catching up anymore.
Yeah.
Because
It's ancient history.
It is now.
Yeah.
It's your Super Bowl are on like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah. I had a waistline the last time the Cowboys were in the Super
I had
Bowl.
hair, Harry. I mean,
All right. Yeah.
I probably had hair in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
In the mid-90s.
So did I.
So
down, down to here.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
But I mean, just wind him up and let him go. I don't know what took him so long to mention that he hated that, but because I'm sure he's been getting it forever. But man, the Cowboys at this point are they'll never be irrelevant because of their stature in the NFL and Jarrett and everything. But from a competitive competing for a Lombardi standpoint, they have been irrelevant. Yeah. So look, they're not in that mix. They're not in that conversation with validity ever. They're always in it because they're the Cowboys, but not because of valid football, tangible, successful reasons.
I'm with you, Jason. When you talk about like the word irrelevant, I've struggled with that word too, because I'm like, no, they're the Cowboys, are still relevant. However, how do you take them seriously?
Yeah,
even if they have a great regular season, which they have had over recent years, and they just tank it, they just go in the toilet in the playoffs. They're just done. And the Eagles have lapped them, even to the point. Let's not forget, maybe 2 months ago, it was Stephen Jones at a press conference. The guy asked a question by a guy I think who writes for Cowboys.com. Hey, can you learn from other football teams like the Eagles, for instance, on how to handle the cap? And Stephen Jones is like, yeah, we can. So any success that the Cowboys could have from this point on could be because they took a page out of the Eagles book. So I hate to tell Emmitt Smith this. If you're talking about, Super Bowl wins is the only thing that you use to measure over the course of 50 years, well, then, the Cowboys have more. But if you're talking about catching up right now, the Eagles have lapped them tenfold.
Yeah.
It'd be like in the NHL, the Montreal Canadiens saying that. They have the most championships in the history of the game, but they haven't won since 93.
Right.
So
since Leclerc was there.
Yeah, exactly. And Patrick Roy. I mean, that's how long ago
and
it
Desjardins.
was.
Wasn't Desjardins on that team too?
Yeah, he was. And then he was traded to the Flyers.
Exactly. I know my hockey. I just don't know Flyers hockey.
Who'd they beat?
Didn't they beat the Kings? The Kings?
They beat the Wayne Gretzky LA Kings.
Yes, it was the Kings.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We're a hockey
Calgary won it in '89.
Owned by Bruce McNall.
Yes.
Oh wow. Good.
How about that?
You saw the great documentary that ESPN did.
No, I actually just lived through
all
the
the
whole
King's
era.
Men.
Yeah, I don't need this. I don't study up on my documentaries. I lived through it.
Not a documentary guy, huh?
Yeah. I will be when they do the Howie Roseman 30 for 30.
I will as well.
Which hopefully that first segment that we did, our second segment, should be on the 30 for 30.
Yeah,
that'd be like the trailer,
right?
Yeah.
Instead of them always using the cuz for these things.
Yeah.
It really annoys me.
Yeah. He's got to be our spokesman all the time.
Right.
Because of the dirty puddle.
It's a
That
joke.
Borden Passion,
and all that stuff. Enough. I got a dirty puddle out here in Westchester, too.
What if I told you?
B-roll of that.
Yeah, what if I told you?
What if I told you? I love that guy. That guy. That's. I mean, we all appreciate voices, but that guy. What if I told you that a general manager that won 2 Super Bowls was hiding in a broom closet for a year? Like what? Like that would be.
Oh,
that'd be awesome.
Hey,
last
like
question.
I wish Don LaFontaine was still alive. The old movie.
Oh yeah.
In a world, Howie Roseman
Yeah.
was in a broom closet, wet mop or dry mop.
handing out jockstraps.
All right. What do we got now?
One question.
Mel Kiper?
Mel Kiper.
Todd.
Todd. I didn't know that Mel Kiper drove to all the drafts. Apparently, he's flying to Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Where's home base for Mel Kiper? Isn't he in like
Baltimore?
Maryland?
Baltimore.
I think he's a Baltimore guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was somebody from the Baltimore Sun that suggested to him, "Hey, people are really into this draft stuff. You should cover to just do the draft." And he did. And look at his career.
Made a cottage industry out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He doesn't fly, but he is flying to the draft for this Green Bay, Wisconsin. So it got me thinking about all the routes, how far he's had to travel over the years for the draft. So I'm going to ask you guys, longest road trip of your life. What's your personal record for longest road trip?
Now, is this based on mileage or who was along for the road trip? Because sometimes a shorter trip with the wrong person feels like a lot longer.
It's a good point.
Well, now I'm going to ask both. I was going for mileage, but I mean, if you got one that is just horrible company, go for it.
I thank God I wasn't in that RV that went to Jacksonville back in 2005.
Oh wow!
When we were at WIP and we sent.
Oh yeah, that was just before I got there. Yeah, that was just before I got there.
Broke down like 3 times on the ride down there. Cuz Martirano and Bubba.
Oh my God!
The producer were driving down there in an RV to go to some like just nasty campground apparently in Jacksonville. I'm like, yeah, I'm not part of that trip.
Wow.
It must have smelled like a deli in there by the time they got there. I mean, I've made some pretty long trips. Probably the longest for me was I went from State College, as my dog's going nuts. I drove from State College in an RV, mind you, to go to the NASCAR Winston 500 at Talladega Motor Speedway. We drove 16 hours through the night. And we get there at by Talladega at 5 a.m, and the parking lots weren't open yet a couple of days before because you could camp there. So we went to the supermarket to get some food and stuff and a bunch of beer. And we get to the cashier line. She goes, "Can't buy the beer yet." She goes, "Oh, why not?" She goes, "It's got to be 7 a.m. So we go right out to the RV, cracked a couple of beers that we had in there, waited till 7 a.m., bought our beer, and went in. Got there, went to for that race, and it got rained out. We didn't even see a race. Drove 16 hours to not see Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Ricky Rudd, and Rusty Wallace turn laps at Talladega Motor Speedway. That's probably my longest one.
Wow, you sound like a lyric out of an Eric Church song.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Harry, what's your longest?
Mine are twice. I went around the country twice in a motorhome with my parents back in the 80s. Okay, California, the whole loop, Montana. I've been in every state of the United States except
Going to see
Alaska.
Marty Moose, Harry?
Yeah, Marty Moose. It was like vacation. Yeah.
Twin family trucks.
Exactly. So that happened twice, but I've done a lot of sojourns myself, and my longest was 18 hours in one shot. Only got out of the car twice to get gas and go to the bathroom from here to Tampa to go down to my mom's place back 2 years ago when she went in the hospital. So I went all 18 hours all in one shot by myself in the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I could be a
impressive.
long distance trucker, actually.
That's impressive. I've done the Tampa to Philly. I've done the Clearwater to Philly. Yeah. I've done that. That was through the night, and that was with Joe Wechter and Al Morgani.
Oh my!
Because we had a big snowstorm in Philly. Wechter's kid was in a play, and he couldn't miss it. Great dad Joe is. And Joe called me. We were in line at the airport in Tampa, and he's like, "Do you just want to drive back?" And I was like, "Hell no!" And then literally 10 minutes later, I just see canceled on the board, and then we got in the car.
Wow! And Al's already got the Hertz lined up.
Yeah, right. There was one moment there where Al's daughter, I remember, called us when we were in the car and we were driving. I think we were barely even out of Florida yet. And she just said, we were telling our family, "Hey, this is what we're doing. Here's the plan." And Al's daughter said, "Why didn't you guys just drive or fly to Charlotte or something?"
Driving and then get to the hub at Charlotte and fly the rest of the way.
No, fly to Charlotte and then drive the rest of the way.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And we all looked at each other like we are the 3 biggest idiots you could have found to put in a car. But we did it through the night. I think Al and I did the majority of the driving, but I don't mind. I don't mind the open road, man.
I don't either.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Especially at night. I don't like it as much at night now because of the glare and my eyes. You don't see as well as you used to.
Okay.
But I mean, recently, a couple of years ago, when I was coaching my son's team, we had a tournament down in Charleston, South Carolina, and we had to play 2 games on the Sunday because we made it to the championship, and then the championship ended at like 5. So me, my wife, and Evan, we made like a bed in the back of the van with the hockey bag and everything. It smelled like hell.
Oh, it must have smelled like
he slept
ass.
the whole way back, right? And they both slept the whole way back. I drove from Charleston is basically take a right here, take a left, get on 95, you're in Philly.
Right.
700 miles later, right? And you can do
Right.
DC. I drove that whole thing straight through. It was like 11 hours.
Yeah.
I think we arrived back home at like 4 in the morning. But I don't mind that. There's a solitude on the roads.
Oh yeah.
To me,
Mhm.
and
I agree.
I'll find something to listen to, whether it's podcasts or some music at points and stuff. Sometimes you just turn it off and listen to the road.
Mhm.
I think there's peace on the highway.
I agree.
Life is a highway, Harry.
But it's an odd spot for Kuiper to suddenly fly. It's not a direct flight. There's no direct flights to Green Bay from
Correct.
Baltimore. He'd have to
Yeah, you're
connect.
going-
I mean, he could have done
going-
it. Probably Chicago or Detroit or someplace like
Dude,
that.
Baltimore people, like Philly people, some Philly people go to BWI because it's easier to navigate. Do Baltimore people come to Philly to fly out of Philly?
No, everyone in Baltimore has a commitment. I mean, I can speak from experience. Everyone in Baltimore has a commitment to Southwest Airlines, and they do not abandon Southwest Airlines. It's
that
as
right?
simple as that.
They're the connection flight people.
Yeah, exactly.
I am
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
Terminal changing and all that stuff. No, I am out on that.
Mhm.
That's that for me. That's a click. Nope.
Yep. Not happening.
Fellas, this was a pleasure. Glad we could get all 3 of us together for this one. We're going to be doing this twice a week. Are we settled on Mondays and Thursdays, or what are we doing here?
Yeah, I think that works for me. But get back at it on Monday and get ready for the draft. Get ready to start rearing for the season, and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up.
week.
You're ready to go to bed.
That's what did I leave that out, Harry? I left bed out, which is behind me here, where I spend quite a bit of my hours these days watching.
I won't hear
cards.
from you for about 36 hours.
Yeah, 34 of which I will be asleep.
Exactly.
He basically built his dorm room in his basement. And
Yeah,
that's sort of-
It's an apartment,
That's really
It's
what
an
he's
apartment.
got. Yeah. Yeah.
studio apartment.
Well,
Yeah.
fellas, a pleasure. We'll
Yeah,
be back
great
with you guys
stuff.
Monday, Thursday again next week for Eagle Squad podcast. We will be, getting guests later on. We're just getting everything underway. This is the 2nd episode we've done. Thanks everybody in the chat. I see Jeremy is in here. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you. See Ari is in here. Appreciate you. Thank you very much, guys. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, he has a
We'll be back
message
with
for
you guys.
Emmitt Smith
Yeah.
there. Go Birds from Ari Stein there. Nice work.
Exactly. Thanks everybody in the chat. You guys are great. We will be back with you guys on Monday for another Eagles Squad podcast. That's Harry Mays. That's Jason Martinez. I'm Marc Farzetta. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. We got our guys on our daily podcast doing a fantastic job. We'll be back joining along on Mondays and Thursdays when it comes to the Eagles Squad podcast for a full hour of Eagles content. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Catch you guys on Monday, and I'm going to go ahead and hit this button. See you guys later.